Hi, and welcome to She's the Boss, the show that is all about female founders and women doing extraordinary things in business. And oh boy, I cannot wait to introduce to you my next guest. Julie Dempsey is the author of a book called Found, Swiping Right on Me to Find Love. And I just love the name, so I can't wait to hear about it. She's the entrepreneur in residence for the studio in Sydney. She's a transformational hypnotherapist and coach. And she's the ex-general manager of SBE Australia, so Springboard Enterprises. So welcome, Julie. It's fantastic to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, I am absolutely thrilled to be here, for you to be here, but I particularly want to hear about your book, which sounds amazing, and I don't even know what it means. So, Found, Swiping Right on Me to Find Love. Tell me all about it.
Yes, well, it's a saucy tale.
I love a saucy tale.
Of my dating experiences, but
right.
It started out as just a bunch of funny dating stories. I was telling them to my friends when I was newly divorced and dating again, a situation a lot of us find ourselves in.
Yep, I've been there.
Yeah. And it was kind of my way of coping with it, to write down these stories and to share them. And that was over 10 years ago that I started doing that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right.
And I set it aside because while it's kind of fun to tell these stories, there wasn't a big why behind it.
Right.
And in the past 2 years, I've started noticing things kind of going downhill a bit in the dating world with the dating apps.
Yeah.
Where people are becoming really fed up. There's a lot of really bad behavior out there. And I wanted to shift that.
Yes, great. Anything to do. I mean, I'm not on the dating scene at the moment, but the number of stories I hear about dick pics and people being harassed and, you know, guys who look great in camera and are awful in real life and all of that. Anything to change that's got to be good.
Exactly. So I realized that I had a deeper story here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, my why behind this is I want to create an opportunity for us to be more kind, considerate, and respectful to ourselves.
Yes, I'm so behind you.
And so this is really about my experience of finding myself and really coming into my own, having not realized that when I got married, I had no idea who I was.
Right.
Yeah, I was really following what I should be doing and what was expected. You know, go to uni, graduate.
I think there's a lot of us have been in that position and know, you know, that natural progression that parents and family and friends kind of, you know, guide you along, shall we say.
Exactly. And it's also well-meaning, but I think a lot of women get to a point in their life where on the outside it looks phenomenal. You know, I had a great career. Theoretically, I had a great husband. I had it all. But on the inside, I'm like, something's not right here. Yeah. And something needs to shift. And that was really getting to be able to get to a point where I had a voice again, where I could figure out who I was and what I wanted, instead of spending all of my time pleasing others and doing what they wanted and what I thought was expected of me, both at work and at home in my personal life.
Wow. Oh, you are just amazing. So was there a moment, was there a particular date, was there a particular story that you thought, hang on a minute, I'm going to write a book about this. This is bigger than just, you know, me and my little stories. Because I know that you have a big purpose now, but was there something that triggered that?
Yeah, I think what really triggered it was having an experience that's talked about in the book where I was ghosted.
Oh my God.
I'd been seeing for a while, and then getting back out and dating again and just seeing that we're just not honoring each other and ourselves and, you know, showing up in a way that is positive. And I started looking around the world and saying, you know, there's a lot going on in politics and all these other things. That's not my space, right? Yeah. I'm not going to change the world in terms of politics. But I think by sharing my story and helping people to see and live vicariously through it, I can help people see that there's a better way to be and that we need to show up for ourselves in that way. And then we need to be kind and considerate and respectful of others too.
So hence the swiping right on me as opposed to someone else, like love yourself first And then it'll be easier for you to manage the, I guess, rocky terrain that is dating.
Exactly. And this ties into all of our relationships though, right? It's our relationship with ourselves. It's our relationships with maybe who we're dating, who we're already involved in a long-term relationship. It's our relationships at work as well.
I was going to say, with your boss, with your employees, with your colleagues, it's all about kindness and consideration, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And respect. And, you've got to start with yourself in setting up those appropriate boundaries. And so often as women, we forget to do that because we're spending so much time really wanting to prove who we are.
That's
and
right.
Please everyone around us.
And I think any woman listening to this will know, and this will resonate with them, because we've all done that. Oh, yeah, I love football, if you don't like football. Or, yeah, I'll go hiking with you, even though you've never done it in your life, whatever it might be, that we do to kind of, fit into someone else's agenda, as opposed to maybe saying, look, I don't really like that, but let's go to a play because I really like theatre instead, or let's compromise.
Exactly, 100%. And, it starts from an early age where we're just told when we're having these feelings, no, you're okay. No, you need to be like this. And we start in that mold. And, it took me decades to realize I didn't know who I was or what I wanted. And so in doing that work for myself, I'm able to work with clients. I'm able to show that through the book. And, hopefully people can enjoy the reading and learn through example of my stories to really see that there's a better way to be. And hopefully I can help them shortcut some of the experiences that I've had and get to
brilliant. I just think that is so important. But listen, Julie, you have had, and certainly when I look on LinkedIn, an incredible career that is all sorts of exciting things. So would it be all right with you if we went back to, I don't know, when Julie was maybe 10 or 12 and tell me what you were like as a little girl, and then when you finished school, how your career has evolved since then? I'm absolutely fascinated in people's entrepreneurial journey.
Yes. Well, it's funny because when I look back at this, there are some really telling things from when I was a little girl that I didn't realize until just recently. I was really competitive.
Were you?
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that happened at school was there was a contest to see who could read the most biographies. And so I decided I was going to win that contest.
Right.
But I also decided there was this little inner feminist in me that I didn't even know what that word meant at that time. I was going to read all biographies about women.
Ah, very smart. What a clever girl you were.
Right? It just it came to me. Unfortunately, in order to win the contest, I had to start reading about men too, because we ran out of biographies about women.
Well, doesn't that say something in itself?
Absolutely. So that's where it started. My next competition was Girl Scouts, selling the most cookies.
You work a bit. Can I ask, do you have brothers and sisters, and are your parents competitive in business or in life?
I'm the oldest of three, and I think although my parents said they loved us equally, we were competing for their love. So this was how it came out. And I'm not quite as competitive anymore, but in those early ages, that really kept me going, because getting out as a Girl Scout and going door to door and selling cookies, that was such a great lesson that taught me how to talk to people, right?
Well, yeah, right.
And I also learned that I was making a lot of money for another organization, not for myself.
Yeah. And then on top of that, though, you do get skills like how to knock on a complete stranger's door and get to the point really quickly, how to sell, how to build that kind of rapport very quickly. But I mean, we don't really have, I know when I was younger in Australia, we used to sell chocolate bars and things, but certainly in American movies, and that's all I can really go on, there is a lot of talk around the cookie selling when you're younger. So it's obviously a big thing over there, is it?
Absolutely.
Right.
Great part of Girl Scouts, and I learned so much, but I learned that since I could do that, since I could go knock on doors, I decided I was going to start my own little business, decorating soaps and selling those. So I went back to the same people's homes And so now I have these to sell. So I started my first business when I was about 8 years old.
You are amazing. That's really clever. I've got a son who, when he was about 8, did the same thing and decided to make batches of muffins and go and sell them up and down the street for dollars, and came back with $90 from one tray of muffins. I was like, I'm in the wrong business. But I love it when you see children, starting to get that entrepreneurial spirit. So, okay, so tell me what happened next.
So what happened next was we had a module in school where we were studying careers, and I picked public relations. And that's
Great.
what I wanted to do. And, all through uni, I focused in on, I was going to go into public relations. I joined a sorority so I could be the officer of public relations.
Right.
I did internships in public relations firms. So early on, I was very focused in on what I wanted to do and very specific about what was going to happen.
And that is super specific, because I think I would say you're a little bit younger than me, but I know that my uncle had a big PR company in Ireland, and I was about 8 when I said, I want to be like my Uncle Bill. But it took me years to really understand what PR was. Yeah. So it's fantastic that you learned it so young. So what did you do? So you were doing all of this at school, at uni, sorry.
Yeah,
then what happened?
I did all of this, and then I ended up on the advertising side of things at one of the internships in relations, and I actually really enjoyed that. So that's where I started my career when I graduated, in advertising.
Okay.
And such, again, a great lesson, because you work with multiple clients. You need to make each one of them feel they're the only one. Yep. You need to come up with very specific results for them. Mm-hmm. And you're working on these tight, ridiculous deadlines.
And there's also that lovely vibe, though, in ad agencies. And I know when I started working in them, I was like, we work very hard, but we also play hard. And there's a lovely camaraderie in an ad agency. Because I then went into graphic design, and let me tell you, there's none of that in that industry. Yeah. And I thought it would follow me. Okay, so you're working in an ad agency. And what country are we in? I'm guessing America.
In the United States. So I grew up in California. I was in Southern California at the time.
Okay.
And I loved the work that I was doing, but I also, I had my first experience with imposter syndrome, because I'm sitting in there as like a 22-year-old female.
Yeah.
These much older gentlemen, what they should be doing with their business. And I'm thinking, why are they listening to me? And
wow.
Back then, we didn't talk about imposter syndrome.
No.
I never heard those words. But there was this voice inside of me saying, how come they're listening to me? And I've got so much more experience. But I kept that voice inside, and I continued to pursue what I was doing and became very successful at that. But I also decided I wanted to get to working in the businesses and consulting to them at that point in time. So I went back to grad school, and I ended up working at a consumer packaged goods firm, Nestle Beverage.
Hang on, what did you do back at grad school though? I guess your first course was PR, was that right?
Communications undergrad, and then at school it was a MBA, Master's of Business.
Oh wow, right. So, you took it very seriously.
I did. I had everything planned out along the way. Until recently, I've made a shift in that. But yeah, I was very serious about my career, and I worked very hard to continue progressing.
Right.
And I worked lots of hours. I made my way from consumer packaged goods into, eventually, I was in the Silicon Valley area. So the whole tech.
I'm so jealous. I just love the sound. I mean, obviously I haven't been there, and maybe I wouldn't be so jealous if I had. But when anyone talks about being in Silicon Valley, I'm like, woohoo! So what was it like?
Well, it was very interesting as a female.
Right. Yes.
I was definitely playing in a man's world, and I had to continue to prove myself again and again.
Right.
And I was up to the challenge. I continued to do it. But I would come in and I'd work so hard and I'd do so much. And again, continuing to try and prove myself all the time, I would get into a cycle of burnout.
Right. Can I just ask, what were you consulting about? I mean, were you doing PR? Were you doing...
No. I was in the business by then. I was working as a product manager.
Okay.
So running product development teams. So it was typically myself for example, I was working, the biggest company I worked at in tech was Yahoo.
Right.
So I ran the homepage of Yahoo on a global basis back when it was the number one page in the world.
Wow.
So
Julie, that's amazing. But are you saying the environment was a bit challenging, though? Just too many blokes around and not enough women supporting each other?
Yeah, it was a bit challenging, but I think in general the business itself was a bit challenging because it was very competitive.
Right.
And, I said very young, I had that competitive spirit, but I started to realize that this was something that was holding us back instead of moving us forward, right? We had teams within the company competing with each other. And I got to the point where I moved from running the homepage to having a role where I had purview over what other people were doing in other teams. And I was trying to bring them together, but they were so dead set on they were going to be the team that was going to bring this to market that we had resources, not enough for each team. If you brought them together, you could really have what you needed. But the head of each team was so dead set their team was going to make it. And it just wasn't a conducive way to be running your business.
No, that is a really great insight into a dysfunctional corporate business where you're getting tiny bits of what you could get if everyone came together, and also fostering that culture of competitiveness, I think, is a huge mistake.
Right. And that's why I started to learn that I had to start looking at this a different way because there's a better way to be. And people weren't really talking about that yet in business, right? It was still very much a world of you go to work and you have your persona at work, and then you come home and there's a different persona perhaps.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about home life. You really showed up as that boss instead of somebody who really was, that camaraderie.
That whole leaders don't show weakness kind of thing that was huge in the 80s and 90s.
Yes, absolutely. And I saw what it did to people. So as I moved on to other tech companies and I was high enough level in these companies, I could start doing some of my own things. I started incorporating some things like mindfulness and meditation and yoga classes to try and see if I could help to shift the culture of the company.
Wow.
Yeah.
You must have been one of the most popular bosses in Silicon Valley if you were doing that.
Well, it depends whose eyes you were looking at. For some people, yes. For others, I was doing something a little bit different.
Yeah.
But so I said, on the one side now, I'm getting a little bit less serious, right, in terms of being very focused on what needs to come next because I'm starting to see there's a different way. So I like to say there on the one side there was hippie Julie and then there was corporate Julie. And how do you bring the two of them?
I love that combination in anyone really, that sort of hippie side and the corporate side because they're not as disparate as people think they are.
They're not. And the funniest thing is, because I'd managed large teams and even the people who weren't in my direct report, I kind of brought into the fold and was just a natural leader and manager in the way of helping teams really come together and get things done.
Yeah, great.
Which was phenomenal on the one hand. On the other hand, I give so much that, again, I burnt out and needed to look at how do I do this differently. And
so let's just talk a little bit about burnout. What do you mean when you say you burnt out? Because I'm speaking to a lot of high profile women and this is a recurring theme that I keep hearing about women pushing themselves so hard that their body breaks down.
It really does, mentally and physically. And we don't notice it because what happens is we start feeling fatigue. We've got adrenal burnout. We're feeling tired all the time, but we've got so much on our plate that we need to keep doing. So we keep pushing and going and going and pushing. And what we don't realize, signs of burnout and the things that happen, brain fog, fatigue, like I said, the adrenal burnout and all of these things going on that are really causing us to deteriorate both mentally and physically.
So what happened in your case? I've heard of people having to take to their bed for a year because their body just, they get chronic fatigue. So what happened in your case?
I moved to Australia.
Yay! Lucky us. I'm very glad you did. But that was the big thing, was it? Like, I have to get out of here and make a change in my life, a dramatic change.
It was. But the funny thing is, I changed my patients, but I didn't change my behavior.
Right.
Right. So I came in to this country, and I came on my tourist visa.
I was going to say, why Australia? What had happened that made you think you wanted to come here?
Yeah, I came on holiday and I really loved it. And I actually, while I was on holiday, went to a breakfast that was in the startup community.
Right.
I thought, you know what? It's a much younger community here. Maybe I could have more of an impact in a different way.
Yes.
The States, and I thought this could be really cool. Let's try it.
I love the way you think.
Yeah. And so I started networking and was tapped on the shoulder to run SBE Australia.
Which must have been very new. Were you the first GM there? Or, I mean, SBE is only 5 or 6 years old, isn't it?
No, it was actually 5 years old when I joined. So it's about 10 years old now.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And so it was a phenomenal organization. And I was working with women and helping them with their businesses. But it was a small organization, and I did what I knew how to do. I worked around the clock and continued to do exactly what I'd always done. You know, I was giving to all of the people that I was supporting and forgetting about myself. So you talk about what's that aha moment?
Yeah.
The aha moment for me was I went to the movies one night.
Yeah.
And I'm walking across the street, and a push bike smack right into
Ouch. Right.
Literally on the ground, hit by a bike. And the next day I get up to go to work, and I can walk very slowly to get to work. And I think life literally just smacked me on the ass and said, "Julie, slow down."
Oh, I know, but thank goodness you did get that message, because I think so many people didn't. So you didn't. So obviously you'd had the accident and stuff, but you didn't get yourself to that completely low point, did you?
Well, I think I did, but I shoved it down and ignored it. Right.
And just kept going. God.
And kept going. And life said, you know, no, not good enough. You've got to start examining what's going on here. And it literally all came crashing down. Like, that happened. I went to a yoga class the next morning, and there was a little bit of a meditation. The words that instructor said to me were just about kind of looking at your life. And I just sat there, and the tears just came. And I realized I'd moved country. I'd done all of these things, and I hadn't changed anything at all. And I still wasn't at a point where I really knew who I was or what I wanted, because I'd continued on that path of what was expected. And
also, there's so much prestige that comes with being in certain roles, and it's very hard to let go of that if you've been in that position and go, well, am I going to be a nobody? Like, what am I going to do that's still going to have that impact? So what did you do? Well,
and on top of that, if I might add, there's who am I to be feeling badly when I've got all these great things going on in my life, right? And the reality is, and now I work with a lot of clients who are saying that same thing. And the reality is, we all have our different experiences. And although some of these might seem like first world problems, there's still problems for us. And if we're not being in alignment with who we are and what we want, something has to give until we get to that point where we accept what we're doing.
So you went to that yoga class that morning. You have tears running down your face when you think, I've made no change. So what did you do next?
I resigned.
Really? Like the same day?
Resigned. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a really tough thing to do, but I just knew that I needed to do something immediately, or I'd just continue the way I was going.
Right. Well, that's a massive move. So you go in and resign. At that stage, did you have any idea what you were going to do, or were you just thinking, I just want a holiday, or I want to go and lie in bed for a while?
Well,
where was your head?
Yeah, I'd been in Australia for 2 years, and I'd seen none of it unless it was, hopping on a plane to go to a meeting.
Right.
And I decided, you know what, I just need to take some time to reassess and figure out, what should this look like? What should I be doing? And I started traveling a bit within the country, and then I left to go back to the States and visit. And as I was flying back, my phone was ringing, and people were calling saying, "Hey, could I hire you as a coach?" And I thought, that's
it.
Yeah. Well, for much of my career, I started saying before, when I was managing all these other people said, you should be a coach. I'm like, no. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, maybe I actually should be a coach.
Plus, it would give you that flexibility, I guess. I mean, and you've got people chasing you, asking you if you'd be their coach.
Yeah. And so I started with that business, and I started realizing, though, that it's not skill set that holds us back most often, it's mindset.
Interesting and very, very profound. Okay, so what did you do once you came to that realization?
So I started looking into neuroscience and trying to figure out how can we use our minds to help us. And I came across a hypnotherapy course, and I read about this. I'm like, this is everything that I'm looking for to be able to help people. So I trained as a hypnotherapist.
Wow. I know there are transformational coaches in hypnotherapy, but talk to me about how practically that applies for business. Like, how do you apply hypnotherapy to business?
Yeah. So a lot of things that people are dealing with, burnout, anxiety, people pleasing,
imposter syndrome,
fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
These are all things, money blocks. That's a big one when you're running your own business.
Yeah.
So these are all things that there is a root cause of why we're experiencing these things deep in our subconscious mind. And you and I are work this out on our own. Like, sometimes we kind of get it, but we can't shift it until we tap into that subconscious.
Yeah, that makes enormous sense.
And so we're able to make immediate change within a 2-hour hypnotherapy session.
Can you give me an example of someone? I mean, I don't want names, but somebody that you've worked with, what their role was and how it did make a change, because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So one of the things which was the most surprising to me is I worked with a client who had dyslexia.
Right.
And they came to the end of the session and they're looking around like this. I'm like, what are you looking for? And they said, I'm looking for the noise. Like, there used to be all this noise and chaos in my head, and it's just gone now.
Wow. Are you talking about in the session they went for? That's amazing.
Right after the session. Another one, I worked with somebody who was stepping into a role where she needed to lead meetings and present, and she had a huge fear of that. And we were able to get back to the root cause of what happened in childhood that left her feeling without a voice. And that's very often what, we feel like we're not enough, we don't fit in, we don't have a voice. They're all very similar core issues that show up in very different ways.
Right. That is absolutely fascinating. And I hadn't ever thought of that, but you're totally right. I can see how tapping into the subconscious would really, there's a lot of things that hold us back, as you say, and, we're not always conscious of what they are.
Yes. Well,
amazing.
And very often they're the things that propel us forward, right? So that competitive spirit, that people-pleasing got me very far in life and far in my career till all of a sudden it didn't, because I was feeling like I'm not who I'm supposed to be. I'm questioning, am I good enough at what I'm doing? And I'm constantly trying to prove that I am. And that gets to the point where you're spending more time in your head processing all of this than you are actually accomplishing what you need to. So it's time to make a change and just reprogram a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So you started doing this being a coach, but you're on all sorts of advisory boards and doing all sorts of things with different companies. So tell me, once you decided on that, how has that career evolved, I guess, because it's always an interesting journey going out on your own. And when you're helping other people, it's so rewarding, or I certainly find it, and I'm sure you do too. But how did you work out what your career path was going to be? Having been such a competitive sort of A-type personality in your previous incarnation.
Well, what I've done is I've started to trust in myself and trust in the universe that the right will show up. And I'm learning to set boundaries about what I will do and what I won't do and what I want to do and what I don't want to do. So
Right.
I really don't have a grand plan anymore.
You're starting to sound like me now.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually a really beautiful thing because now I have what I call a portfolio career where
Yeah,
not
great.
for business, the hypnotherapy and coaching. I'm
Mm-hmm.
now working to promote my book and to get that message out there. And it's all around that core principle of really wanting to help people unlock their mind to reach their full potential
Yep.
and wanting to help people become more kind, considerate, and compassionate to themselves and others. So as I'm looking...
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps. That's exactly what we want the world to be
Right?
like.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as I'm assessing different things that come my way, it's very clear, should this be a yes or a no to something that I take on? Can I have that impact?
Right.
Can I help people in that way? And
Okay.
if I can, then great, I'll take it on.
Okay, so let's talk about what you've taken on. Can you tell me, since the beginning, what sort of opportunities came your way? Because one of the things I think about being a little bit more ad hoc and kind of going with the flow is that if opportunities come up, you don't need to say, oh, that's not part of my plan. If you like the idea, you can go for it. But so what things have you done since then?
Yeah. So, well, you talked about being an entrepreneur in residence with the studio.
Yes. Now, just tell everyone what the studio is, because I'm in Melbourne and I had no idea, and I did an interview with them, and it was only afterwards that I found out where the studio is. So, tell our audience.
Located in Sydney at the Startup Hub. It's one of the anchor tenants, and it's a co-working space that is primarily supporting people and businesses in the media and art spaces. And
I didn't know that. There you go. I love it.
Yeah, and they
right.
do some wonderful things there. And right now they're running a program for founders.
Right.
And I have the privilege of coming in and working with these founders and mentoring them through their businesses. And it's very diverse businesses. So that's one of the things I love most. I get to work with all of these different companies and help these entrepreneurs figure out the right path to move their business forward.
Amazing.
That's one of the things. Run group sessions for entrepreneurs out of another one of the anchor tenants at the Startup Hub, which is Tank Labs. And so in those founders programs, the groups that I run, they bring together like 6 founders, and we meet on a weekly or fortnightly basis and just come to talk about the issues at hand and what they need help with.
So important. And I mean, I just have to say, for anyone listening, get yourself a support network and find yourself a coach or a group or a something, because it just changes everything, doesn't it?
100%. Well, and I still work with a coach, right?
Yeah, same.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because I'm a coach doesn't mean that I don't need that support. And in fact, I had a call with my coach last week, and I've been working with her on and off for over a decade. She's phenomenal. She's back in the States. And she was saying things to me and I was laughing. I'm like, these are the same things I say to my clients. I know them myself, but it isn't until I hear it coming out of your mouth that I can really process it and take it on board.
That is just so true. And I mean, just a small example, I'm always saying to women, find your voice, make sure that, you know your finance and that you do this, that, and the other. And a lot of the time I don't do it until exactly as you say, someone says, have you actually, how financially literate are you, Jules? And you go, not very. And they're like, come on, you're talking about it to other people. Do it for yourself.
100%. And that's the hardest thing to do. And that's why we still engage coaches and other people to work with it. And that's a really important message, especially for women, is you don't need to go it alone. Yeah. Bring on a team that's going to be your support network. It's really, really important. And it makes all the difference in allowing you to really level up and take your business and your life where you want to go.
I agree. And I think there's a lot of people who come out of a corporate role and find themselves incredibly lonely. I'm interviewing female founders all the time, and it is a current theme, a recurring theme, I should say, that they say, I love what I'm doing, but I just find it really lonely. And the other thing is, if you're trying to be the top of the tree, you're trying to be a leader or a coach, it's hard to show vulnerability when you're trying to be seen as somebody that other people look up to. So you have to find those people that are on your level, that are your peers, that you can talk honestly and say, I'm having a shit day, or I need help with this because I'm really stuck.
100%. And actually, it's the same for people in corporate too. When you get to that higher level of corporate, it's the same thing. Who do you turn to?
Yeah.
And so, for my coaching practice, I like to say, I'm that safe space that you can go to and have that conversation. You don't know who else to have it with. Whether it's business, whether it's personal, whether you just need to talk about the fact that I'm feeling really shit that I need to lay off people or make them redundant. Or it's, I just need to talk through with somebody what my next steps are here because I don't have anybody else I can have that conversation with, or things aren't going so well at home, or,
And that's the other thing, of course, with corporate. In particular, you can't, as you said earlier, you can't really bring your home life into the office in the same way that you can as a female founder, or as a founder of any kind. Actually, you don't really have to be a female to feel that. Okay, so what other things? Because you are, I know, involved. There's something to do with kids. What's that one?
With kids?
Yeah, haven't you got something? Did I? Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I thought it was.
I don't have any.
Can I not say that's not a problem? They do kind of impede your life a little bit for a few years, but anyway, okay. So, you're with the studio, and you've been doing this other one with the Innovation Hub. Did you say it was called, or Startup Hub?
Extreme Labs. I do some work with them, and then with another organization, Mentor Walks. I'm a mentor.
Oh, love Mentor Walks, Bobby Marlab.
Yep, exactly. Bobby and Adina are fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm actually giving a talk to the mentees in May.
Wonderful.
So that I can continue to help, them to really find their voice, whether it's personally or professionally.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's really important to me to share the message as widely as possible, because we need to be able to build that confidence so that we can build the lives that we're looking
Yep.
to.
And there's nothing really like being able to see somebody else who's going through the same sort of thing, or somebody else who's talking about something that you go, oh my God, that's me. And you can relate, and that role modeling, I think, is just so super important.
Exactly. And that comes back to why I wrote the book. People were asking, do you really want to put yourself out there in that way? And, I said, I can't not, because I feel like this is something, it's so much easier when you read somebody else's story, or you hear somebody else's story.
100%.
Look at that and go, oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Or if you're lucky, you go, oh, I'm not going to do that thing I was going to do because they did it and it went wrong.
Yeah. But it's so much easier to learn that way. And that's why, in addition to individual sessions, I do these group sessions with founders. Because when you're hearing somebody else get that insight and that advice, sometimes it's easier to take it on than when it's coming directly at you. And that's why accelerator programs and things like that work so well, because you're getting the insights from seeing what other people are doing in their businesses. Yeah,
right. Wow, Julie, you're just so amazing. Now, I'm going to ask you a curly question. You don't have to answer it, but I'm interested to know, often as we run our own businesses, things happen out of left field that you wouldn't have anticipated. And at the time, I'm going to use my example. At the time, it feels like a disaster and you feel like, I don't even know what to do. And then you shift or move or pivot or use any of those kind of words, and you can look back on it in the past and go, I'm so glad it happened because it set me on that journey and I wouldn't have done it otherwise. Have you had, or, it was great for my business or whatever. Have you had any of those moments that you'd be up for sharing?
Oh gosh, I've had them throughout my career, because everything's all about learning.
Yeah.
I would say, one of them, I'm in at the moment.
Right. Go on, share it then.
Yeah, because I wrote this book. I want everybody to read it, but now I've got to promote it. And I didn't realize that's a business in itself.
Oh, yes. Having worked in PR for a long time, right? And as you know as well, it is a business in itself.
Exactly. And I didn't think about that when I wrote the book. I'm working with people every day saying customers don't just come, you've got to work at it. Right? Again, take my own advice. I was just so excited about the content. I didn't think about the aftermath. I launched, that went great. And now the way that things are being done these days are through social media. Yeah. You build your following, be on Instagram.
Well, that's one of the ways, but you're also a PR queen. And so you know that going to the media will definitely amplify, if not sort of double, what you'd be getting on social media if you can push out those media clippings as well.
And that's exactly where I'm coming back to.
Right.
Is that, what they say about social media, that it's actually harmful to our mindset, is true. The more time I spend trying to put myself in that way, I start looking and going, all these other people are doing all these other things. I should be doing that too. What's wrong? And I start questioning myself. But I have a talk with you about this, or I go and, start looking at the PR side of things and having those conversations that are really authentic, that bring me energy. And, so where I'm at right now, literally this week, is I've got to make a shift in what I'm doing about the book.
Oh, good woman.
Yeah.
I can't, you're so not alone. I work with a few different publishers now, especially self-publishers, and who are working with business owners who've written books. And there seems to be this recurring theme that I'm starting to hear, which is, I've got 2,000 books in my garage. What am I going to do with them?
Yeah.
So they've written it, and whoever it is who's talked them through it has gone, it's going to be like a really great calling card, or it's going to be, like a business card on steroids, and they just don't know how to actually start getting it out there. So it's lovely of you to share that, because I know that is, you're certainly in a big crowd of authors, I think, there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I'm happy to share. It's all about helping people to figure out where they're going. And it's
well, here you go. You've done one interview, and we will push this one out, and hopefully that'll get you a few more sales. But I understand completely. Now, if anyone wants to buy the book, or wants you to coach them, or just wants to get to know you, tell me all the different ways people can get hold of you.
So the book is available on Amazon.com and other online publishers, both paperback and ebook.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can contact me at juliedempsey.com is my website for the hypnotherapy.
And it's Dempsey without the P, just for anyone else who's not sure.
Demsey. Yep. And you can find me there on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. And then I've also got the site Found Dating for the book.
Oh, so, fantastic. What's it called? Yeah. Sorry. What's the site?
Found Dating.
Founddating.com.
Yeah, and then at Found Dating on Instagram. So.
Okay, brilliant. Well, listen, Julie, thank you so much for sharing your story. Gosh, you're a really interesting woman with a lot of interesting things that have happened, and I have no doubt at all that your book is brilliant, and that it's filled with stories that will really help people. So thank you so much for sharing your story with me today.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Jules.
Oh, my pleasure as well. And I can't wait to share this with everyone.